5. Do you think we have a big problem with our federal government? If you do, stay tuned because we at Convention of States have a solution as big as the problem. Our broadcast host is Dale Parrish. He's the Convention of States Indiana State Director. Take it away, Dale.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Maringo Mike, for that introduction. I want to welcome everyone to our broadcast this evening. As Maringo Mike said, my name is Dale Parrish. I am the State Director for Convention of States here in Indiana. And like I said, I want to welcome you to our broadcast. We have another special broadcast lined up for you this evening. We're going to, well, let me get into, I want to get into the different segments of our broadcast so that you know what's coming up. So let me just dive right into those. The first segment that we're going to get into here is what we call the topic discussion segment. This sometimes we'll have an actual topic that maybe we'll bring in a couple people to discuss that particular topic. Other times we'll interview someone. Can be someone from the organization here in Indiana, or it can be someone from our national organization. Tonight, we're going to wind up this series on our Convention of States regional directors. And tonight, we have a young man by the name of Rodney Huckleberry. And Rodney is the regional director for the past states region in Convention of States. And we'll explain to you what that all means. Now, Rodney's been on our broadcast before. It's been some months ago, but I wanted to bring Rodney back on because as a regional director, he has a very, very special group of states. And like I said, we'll get into that when we bring him into the screen here, into the studio. So now after the discussion topic segment, we'll get into what I call general information. I'll bring up my PowerPoint presentation. We'll talk about some resources that we have available to us here in Indiana, as well as give you some current numbers on how we're doing here as a state in Indiana. Time permitting, then we'll get into what we call the Convention of States basics. These are the basic tenets that our program is based upon nationally, of course, as well as here in Indiana. The 3 tenets. So we always try to cover this since we need to continue to keep ourselves abreast of what we're all about nationally as well as here in Indiana. So the Convention of States basics. The next segment after the basics is we'll recognize our viewers tonight. So if you are a viewer, I'll try my best to put your name on the screen here. And if you want to make a comment or ask a question, please do so in the chat section. Keep it brief, and we'll put that up here too. So we always try to recognize viewers that we have tuned in during the broadcast on every broadcast. After viewer recognition, we'll close things out and kind of let you know what we have planned for next Monday's broadcast. Also got a special announcement to make this evening in that closing segment. And I'm going to go ahead and mention it now also, and we'll mention it again in the closing. But what I wanted to mention now to you is that we are going to conduct a summit here in the state of Indiana. It's called the Indiana Convention of States Leadership Summit 2020. And we're going to conduct that. In other words, it's a virtual summit. We're going to Zoom it using Zoom. And we're going to have, it'll be on June 13th. Now that's a Saturday, June 13th at 10 a.m. So please put that on your calendar. Of course, our leadership individuals in the state will be participating in that summit, but you will be able to view it because we're going to stream it through our YouTube channel, COS Indiana. So make note of that. Our YouTube channel, COS Indiana, you will be able to view the summit through streaming through that YouTube channel. Now, our major speaker at the summit is going to be our president, Mark Meckler. And Mark will be speaking as well as conducting a Q&A session after that. And then we also have a couple awards that we want to give out during that summit. So Indiana COS Leadership Summit 2020, June 13th. So I'll try my best to make mention of that again in our closing segment. Right now, I want to come back and open up our discussion topic segment. And in order to do that, I want to bring on our guest this evening. There he goes. Where did he go? There he is. Hey, Rodney.
Hey, yeah. I heard you call me a young man a while ago. I feel like I should go hide right now.
You like that, huh? You like that. Well, I know. You are a young man compared to me.
Can't tell it.
A lot of men are young men compared to me. So anyway, so thank you for coming on tonight, Rodney. Appreciate you taking the time. I mentioned that you've been on this broadcast before. It's been many months ago. I couldn't tell you exactly when.
Yeah, I can't tell you either. It's been a while, but I do remember it started out really well, and then my PC decided to freeze up.
Oh,
We'll have that problem tonight.
Well, hopefully we won't encounter that tonight. But anyway, glad to have you. Well, Rodney, as I mentioned before, whenever we have a guest on, especially a convention of states individual in some capacity or another, we always ask that individual to tell their COS story, because we all have a story. We all have a COS story, not a life story, a COS story. You know, the how and why we got involved in convention of states. So, what's your story, Rodney?
Yeah, well, it's a good thing you didn't say, you said not a life story, because my wife will tell you that you asked me something like that, and I will tell you my life story. Yeah, I'll try to make it brief. I'm a U.S. Air Force veteran. When I joined the military, it was to serve our country and defend the country against foreign enemies. The oath does say foreign and domestic. I didn't realize until I got out that really we had domestic enemies as well. They're right there in Washington, D.C., as well as in our states, as we're learning today with the COVID-19 situation. So when I got out, I was kind of in search of a way to help start to save the country and the Constitution. Kind of joined some other groups and even started one myself, me and another guy, right before Convention of States kicked off. So I had to kind of abandon that. That was back in 2013. And with that, I live in Missouri, and it was me and one other guy, Keith Carmichael, and he eventually became the state director, and I was kind of the all-around guy of everything until he and I were able to build a team here. And it didn't take too awful long. Like I said, that was 2013. We passed the Convention of States resolution here in 2017, almost passed it in 2016. So we had a pretty good team by then, and a lot of district captains and grassroots coordinator and the whole ball of wax. So we had a real organized, really good team we built. And so in 2016, I wrote a letter to, I don't know if you guys know Jenny Rapini at the national level. I don't even remember what the email said, but next thing I know, I got a call, and it was to join become a regional director for the states that had passed the resolution. So how I found out about Convention of States was I was working in my garage one night, and I happened to have, and a lot of people have a similar story like this, I happened to have Mark Levin on the radio. And the interesting thing about this is because we're here with Indiana Live, the show, who Mark Levin had on that night was Senator Long from Indiana, and they were talking about Convention of States. And this
Yep.
was right when Convention of States kicked off. It was like August of 2013.
David Long, Senator David Long. That's right.
Yeah. And so when I heard this, my ears perked up and I listened to it and I looked into it. I don't jump on things quick. And I signed up right away and off we went.
Rodney, did I miss it? Were you involved in the Tea Party movement?
I was involved in the periphery. I joined the rallies and things like that. I didn't go to any meetings at the time.
All right. I don't know why that came to mind that you were associated with that movement in some way or another. So, all right. Well, you hit on some of the main people that I listened to also that got me interested in this. So, our stories are very similar in that respect. So, okay. Well, let's specifically now. What states do you cover in your region?
The states that have passed the resolution. Well, yeah.
Well, we ought to explain that. That was actually going to be the next segment about the difference between past states and open states, but we can combine the two here if you want to.
It's all right. When I started as regional director, there were 8 states that had passed the resolution. Now there's 15. And if I can get them all right, it's Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, Tennessee, Indiana, Missouri, North Dakota, Alaska, missing a couple there, Dale.
Yeah, you are. I used to, when we got above 8, I no longer tried to memorize them because I would always mess them up. But I couldn't even tell you right now which ones you missed. The western states, I guess.
That's the gray hair.
Yeah. I always plan on whenever I'm going to an interview, I take notes with me now.
Yeah.
But there's 15 of us. That's right. And you might as well get into it. What qualifies as a past state?
Yeah, so the past states are the ones that worked so hard, built their teams, and they lobbied their legislators and built the grassroots to pressure the state legislatures into passing the Convention of States resolution in both chambers. And so the governor's not involved with this at all. So so once they pass it in both chambers, then they're all set and ready to go. Sometimes there's a lot of work involved in doing that. We learn how to be lobbyists, grassroots lobbyists, not the paid lobbyists. We're all volunteers. And we learn how to be activists while we're doing getting involved in that. That'll kind of lead into something else we do as a past state later on.
Right. So, so all the states that you're in your region then are states that have passed the resolution, and Indiana is one of those states. We passed it in 2016. The directors that we've had on previously to you their states are all still in play. So those states are still trying to get the resolution passed in their respective legislatures, state legislatures. So, well, the big question then, Rodney, is what challenges do you face in your region?
Yeah, so the biggest challenge I think we have is when a state passes the resolution, a lot of people that joined on think they're done. They don't have to come back until we go to a convention or ratify amendments that come out of the convention. So some of them just go on with their lives and move along. And what they don't realize is the passing the resolution is the easy part, even though it is so hard, and it's supposed to be. But after passing the resolution, we also have the commissioner selection bill or resolution that needs to be done, which is where the grassroots and the team leaders again get with their legislators and draft a bill or resolution to describe and have the framework for how they're going to select the commissioners that go to the Article 5 convention. In some cases, part of them are not legislators, and some are, and sometimes there's legal penalties for violating their commission. That's why we call them commissioners. So after the commissioner selection resolution, sometime close to a convention, there's also the commissioner instructions that need to be drafted, because some states, want their commissioners to maybe not participate in some of the debates on some amendments and other rules and instructions that they want for their commissioners when they go to that Article 5 convention. And then once the convention is held, of course, there's going to be proposed amendments that come out of that, and we have to work towards ratification. And so we're going to need a huge grassroots army and a lot of good leaders like we have now, but even grow more, to get the proposed amendments that come out of the convention passed in the 38 states in order for them to become an amendment to the Constitution to right the ship on that, 3,000 page Constitution we live by, and get it back to the pocket size Constitution.
Right. Okay, well, as Rodney said, as soon as the resolution passed here in Indiana, we could see the enthusiasm drop off, and so it's been a struggle to this day to find people that are interested in I think we do a good job of finding supporters, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in a broadcast. We do a pretty good job finding supporters. It's finding people that are willing to accept leadership positions in our organization. And I think, especially since we're a past state, like you said,
yeah,
so many people think that the job's already done.
Yeah, and I don't want people to leave here thinking that's all we're here for is the convention. Because when I mentioned earlier the activists that have been trained, Convention of States is here for eternity. We pass it on from generation to generation, and that's why we need the big grassroots army. We want to grow a grassroots army of engaged activists and preserve liberty not only at the federal level, but also at the state level. And some of you might be able to relate to that right now with the COVID-19 thing, and we've got I don't know about your state, but here in Missouri, the governor's been pretty good overall with our liberties. We've had some local cities and counties where they have really overstepped and infringed on the rights of the citizens.
Right.
Yeah, so we have to be vigilant about liberty everywhere.
Right. Well, we call that self-governance here, and
yes, sir.
Stress that as much as possible here. Okay, Rodney, I want to thank you for taking the time out to join us this evening, and we just might invite you back again sometime.
Yeah, well, that's great. I must have
You've been a good guest this evening.
Thanks for having me on. I love these things.
So we'll look forward to bringing you back again. So Rodney Huckleberry, Regional Director for the Past States region in Convention of States. Thank you very much, Rodney. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, Rodney. Always a pleasure to have Rodney on and talk to him. All right, I want to get now into the next segment, which is we're going to talk about some resources that we have available here. Let me get Rodney off there. Okay. Now I want to, in order for you to get a good view of my PowerPoint, I want to implement the slideshow option there. You should have a nice full screen of the PowerPoint. So let's talk about resources that we have available to us here. Our main resource is our national website, conventionofstates.com. You're going to hear us make reference to this website frequently, but like I said, it is our national website, jam-packed full of information. But if you're just learning about convention of states and you want to join the movement, this is the first step that you take, is go to that website, conventionofstates.com, and I'll tell you what you need to do here very shortly. But this is the first step, to go there and open an account and sign the petition, and automatically you become then a supporter of Convention of States. Now, embedded in the national website is our state website page, conventionofstates.com/Indiana. Obviously, a more focused look on our state. Facebook, we're on Facebook, Convention of States, Indiana. As a matter of fact, this broadcast is being brought to you through that Facebook page this evening, Convention of States, Indiana. Be sure to go there and like our page. YouTube channel, COS Indiana. Very much an educational resource for us. Now, as I mentioned earlier, our upcoming summit is going to be streamed through this YouTube channel, COS Indiana. But on this channel, you'll find narrated PowerPoint presentations. You'll find recordings of these broadcasts. You'll also find links to a great podcast that our legislative liaison, Paul Phillips, does. You've seen Paul has been on this broadcast a number of times, kind of a regular with us. But the podcast is called The Free to Be Free, and Paul does a terrific job on these podcasts. They're very, very informative. Other social media platforms, Twitter, hashtag COS Indiana, Instagram, LinkedIn. We're on a number of different platforms. So if you're into social media, you should not have any problem finding us. Convention of States. Let me give you some quick numbers on how we're doing here in Indiana. 2019, we went over 41,000 supporters. Been growing tremendously at an annual rate here of over 40%. Our goal for this year, 2020, is to hit 52,000 supporters, and we're right on target to achieve that. About 2,900 people have indicated a willingness to volunteer to help out. And we have about 40 individuals in leadership positions. Now, this is very important. As I mentioned, if you want to become a supporter and just be officially a supporter of Convention of States, you go to the website, conventionofstates.com, open an account, and sign the petition. Now, if you want to get a little more involved, click on the menu selection, Take Action, scroll down to Become a Leader, and look at the different volunteer positions that we have available here. And look at what seems to be, of interest to you. And I want to specifically point out to you to look at the estimated time required on these positions, because some of these will require very little time. Others are going to require more time. So I know your time is very important, as all of us, as with all of us. So you want to look at the estimated amount of time, and if you find one that kind of fits the time you have available, then open it up, read about it. If you're really interested, go ahead and make application. You're not obligated in any way, but when you do that, then your name comes up on a report that I see, as well as a few others every day. And one of us then will be in contact with you to further discuss that position with you. So we always need more leaders, as we mentioned and we talked about it with Rodney, finding people willing and able to take on leadership positions is always a struggle for us. So I encourage you to check that out. All right, let's get in now to the Convention of States basics. These are the three tenets that our program is based upon: the problem, the solution, and the plan. Very briefly here, problem is that our federal government lacks the will and courage to address some basic structural issues in our government today. We've further defined this into three major abuses that we call abuses by the federal government. The first one is the national debt. Before this pandemic hit, our national debt was over 23 trillion. Who knows what it's going to be once the pandemic has come and gone. Obviously, it's going to be higher now. So there really wasn't anything being done to address the debt prior to the pandemic. And so this has got to be addressed. This has got to be addressed. This country has got to address its national debt. So that's the first abuse. Second abuse is the regulatory crisis. As you know, the administrative state is now considered the fourth branch of government. We need to further eliminate regulations, and we need to control how these regulations are created. Okay, and the second or the third abuse has to do with state sovereignty. When our country was founded, the concept of dual federalism was in place, where the federal government and the states equally shared in power. Well, that's now all tilted in favor of the federal government, and we think the career politician plays a big role in this. So we're all for term limits. So those are the three abuses that we see in that comprise the problem area of our basics. The second tenet is the solution, and we believe the solution is right in Article 5 of our Constitution. Article 5 describes the two methods of proposing amendments to the Constitution, and we believe, well, we're going to briefly go over the two methods here, and I'll just leave it at that. There are two methods of proposing amendments to the Constitution. The first method is one that we're used to seeing. That's where 2/3 of Congress propose an amendment or amendments, and these then have to be ratified by 3/4 of the state legislatures in order for them to become amendments to the Constitution, and that would be 38 states. Now, there is a second method in Article 5, never been used, but in this method, 2/3 of the state legislatures apply to hold a convention of states for the purpose of proposing amendments to the Constitution. Obviously, we want to see amendments proposed to the Constitution that will address the three abuses that we described in the problem area. Now, any proposed amendments that come out of the Convention of States would also then have to be ratified, just as in method 1, ratified by 3/4 of the state legislatures, or 38 states. So it requires 2/3 of the state legislatures, 34 states, to make application for this convention to be held. Then any proposed amendments that come out of the convention would then have to be ratified by 3/4 of the state legislatures, or 38 states. Right in Article 5. We're not making this up. That's what we're all about, folks. The third tenet is the plan, how we're going to bring this about. Well, as we mentioned, we need 34 states to call this convention. We need to get 34 states to make application for this to happen, and the application has to be the same. The subject matter of the application has to be the same in all 34 applications. And we have created the application that we want states to use. And this is the first part of our plan, the application strategy, so that each application will address fiscal restraints, limiting power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and term limits. Now, the other part of the plan is mobilizing the grassroots, and that's mobilizing you and me and our state legislators to become the grassroots and to make this happen. And this is what, and Rodney was referring to this in our first segment. This is so important to grow the grassroots and mobilize the grassroots to make this happen. And we have a tremendous amount of momentum going here in Convention of States. We're legislatively in all 50 states now. We have something going on. We have 15 states that have passed the resolution and made the application. And yes, Indiana's one of them. So we would love to have your involvement in Convention of States. And like I said, first step to take is go to our national website, conventionofstates.com, open an account, sign the petition, and become a supporter. All right. That's it for our Convention of States basics. Let's see if, let's try to recognize some viewers that we have here this evening. Well, our first, oh, I see we got a number of viewers here this evening. Let's, Jerry Rowe, he's kind of become one of our regulars. Jerry's made a number of different comments here, and Jerry's one of our, he's our one of our system information analysts here in Convention of States. So thank you, Jerry, for tuning in this evening. And I see Jerry's made a number of a couple other comments here. Lydia Gonzalez, I want to mention her. Lydia is one of our district captains here in Convention of States. Very good district captain, I might mention. So Lydia, once again, we know her as Melba Kaiser, but Lydia Gonzalez is her name. So thank you, Lydia, for tuning in this evening. By the way, Jerry said, hi, Lydia. So I wanted to pass that on to you. Okay. And all right, we have Susan and Rick Lyon. Both, this is a husband and wife team that we interviewed, as a matter of fact. And we interviewed them as, I think it was in our last broadcast, or it might have been the one before that one. But Rick Lyon is our events coordinator for the state, and Susan is taking on the newsletter, state newsletter, which is coming out this month. So both are very, very good contributors, and we're very, very happy to have both of them on board. And Susan mentions that she just heard Mark Meckler live on Facebook, and he was on fire. Yes, Mark does a Sunday evening broadcast on Facebook, and yes, he was. Mark is very much. Mark Meckler's president of Convention of States. He's very, very much into this open estate movement. So yeah, he is very, very, very enthusiastic about that. So thanks, Susan, for mentioning that. All right. Let's see. Do we have any more? I don't think we do. I can't get to them if we do. All right. All right. Let's let's start closing things up for this evening. Now, before I forget, I want to mention once again that we have our summit coming up, our Indiana Convention of States Leadership Summit coming up June 13th. That's a Saturday at 10 a.m. And our featured speaker is going to be Mark Meckler, our president. So please put that on your calendar. And you will be able to stream and view that summit through our YouTube channel, COS Indiana. All right. I want to be sure and mention that. Now, our next broadcast, next Monday evening, will be bringing back Debbie Stewart for another chapter in constitutional literacy. So Debbie does a terrific job in presenting the different chapters of this Constitution series. We are very, very happy to have Debbie. Debbie is a homeschool teacher, And this is a program that she teaches. It's a program that was put out by one of our co-founders, Michael Parrish, co-founders of Convention of States. Michael Parrish and Mark Meckler were both co-founders of Convention of States. And so this is a series that Michael Parrish put out, constitutional literacy. And Debbie teaches this as part of her homeschool duties. So we've asked her to present this series through our broadcast, and she's been doing a great job. So you'll want to definitely tune in next Monday evening for another chapter in constitutional literacy. All right. Well, I always like to close out our broadcast with one of my favorite quotes, and it's a quote that Mark Meckler made some time ago, and the quote goes something like, you know, there's a fundamental question facing us in our country today, and the question is not what should we do, the question is who will decide. The question facing us is simply a two-word question, very simply, who decides. We obviously believe we, the people, should have a greater say-so in these decisions. So that's how I always like to close out each broadcast with this quote. The question very simply is who decides, and once again, we, the people, believe that we should have a greater say-so in who decides. Once again, if you want to get involved in Convention of States, I hope you do. Go to our national website, conventionofstates.com, open an account, sign the petition, and you become a supporter. And I can't stress this enough. Being a supporter is a very important position in Convention of States. You're part of the mobilization of the grassroots. See, and as a supporter, you are part of our grassroots community, our grassroots army here in the state of Indiana. So please do that if you want to get involved in Convention of States and join us and help us make this happen. All right, everyone, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Be sure to tune in next Monday evening, 7 p.m. for Convention of States, Indiana Live. Good night, everyone.